Hello, everyone, and good evening. My name's Shone. I don't know if I said that in my last couple of videos. Perhaps, I think I did. Must have. But see, I normally used to start my Candid Talk videos off with introducing myself, and I'd forgotten to do that. So here I am. My name is Shone, with a W. At least for now. That's my cat. She's just getting offset. So I hope you're having an amazing time today, and I hope that the world is treating you like they ought to treat you. And I know that there are times right now, or right now is really hard, so it almost feels like the world should be treating us a lot better, right? So what I wanted to talk about today was, well, I guess I had the idea in my mind because today I was watching two different videos. And the first video was about, actually it's labeled, and I'm going to link it in the description. The video is labeled Tartarian Tunnel Connecting Canada to England, question mark, Underground Old World Bunker, Forbidden Photos. Now, if you don't know what Tartaria is a place that many people around the world, and I say around the world because this is... I'll get into why around the world, but there's a group of people around the world who believe that there was a large, we'll almost call it civilization, but large empire, you could also look at it and such, that called Tartaria. And this particular video crossed my path. Interestingly enough, I haven't really been looking too much into more videos on Tartaria. However, this one came into my path as it was connected to Halifax. And Halifax is in Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia is something to do with New Scotland, so it has a really long history to Scotland itself. Anyway, so this particular video talked first about Tartaria being in Nova Scotia. Now, one of the key elements that you can find by Tartaria, or buildings of that era or that empire, is that they have a very similar style. And the reason why people mostly identify certain areas, or a large portion of the world in fact, with being once a part of Tartaria, is that there's a large amount of buildings that have a very similar unique style. Now, Tartaria was, from my understanding, was a space that went from, say, Urel, which on the Risk game map, that whole area of Ukraine and that, I guess, Eastern Europe type of area. And then you would go all the way over across the rest of Russia, all through the bottom of the Middle East, and going through Mongolia, possibly even right against the so-called China Wall. And then my understanding is that it went through Russia, through the once land bridge possibly, but that area, down in Alaska, British Columbia, all the way down to California. And so that was my idea of what the empire was. However, this video definitely connected it to Halifax and all the buildings there. And then I started watching other videos, and Prague is one of those Eastern European cities that's highly identified with Tartaria as well. But there's other buildings, and this video really opened my eyes up to, or not necessarily opens my eyes up to, but it keeps it. There's a large part of our history that we're unaware of. And that's where I linked what I knew I was going to talk about, is whenever I get into talking about history and about Tartaria or Lemuria or Atlantis or I forgot how to pronounce that, or Tiamat. Tiamat is, or perhaps was, a rather large planet that used to be where the asteroid belt is. And yeah, there's a lot of different things about our history that have been rewritten. And the idea of Tartaria being a global empire at one point in time has caught the imagination of a lot of people, but there's also a lot of evidence all over the world. Like, there's evidence, and I've seen them on different channels and such, of there being pyramids in United States, that there's like Roman arches. I've seen them in the United States as well, leading us to the idea that our history isn't necessarily what it's been augmented down to. And why I think this is important, and I often speak about this, is because when we have awareness that the history that we are currently living, that history, those grudges, those beefs that people have, or countries have mostly, all of that stuff, it's all the beefs that different religions have against each other, or the suppressed hostility, or all the wars in the past. Like, it's important that if we become aware that this stuff isn't all that we're led up to believe it to be, then we don't necessarily have to hold on to a lot of that anger and hate and mistrust and division and separation. There's a story that I always like telling, I guess. I don't know, I tell it so much, but it's a story that I heard a long time ago, and I think it's something to do with Plato or one of those Greek philosophers, but essentially it was about the Tower of Babylon, and that humans had come together and they built this super, super tall tower that, you know, it touched heavens kind of idea. Like, it was a great, possibly this could be an actual civilization story. But anyway, so that the god didn't like that, and he smashed down the towers, and then he separated the beings, which were once just, you know, just a being, into a female and a male separate part, and then separated them down to languages, and then separated them down into borders, and then separated them down into languages. Oh no, I already said languages. But anyways, just continually separated them, keeping them divided so that they could never ever once again return to that same unity, which they were essentially not to be able to be controlled anymore. So, but anyways, back to the Tartaria stuff. So my idea of Tartaria is that they were an advanced civilization, or not my idea, but my understanding. Yeah, that's the right word. They were an advanced civilization, that they had amazing steam gardens in the Russian area. Their architecture was amazing. So buildings that you'll see in this video that claim to be like just built, the buildings look like they're hundreds of years old. And not only that, there's evidence around considerable part of the planet that there was a mud flood that happened somewhere in between now and, you know, the big flood that actually once again really did happen. So anyways, and how that leads on to the other video that I wanted to talk about. So I definitely recommend that you go and look at that video, because it really does open one's eyes to the possibility that things aren't the way that we think they are. And there's pictures, and the pictures, I don't know, you know, in a world of AI generated stuff, you never really know what you're getting. However, listen to your discernment always, and take what only resonates with you, and use what you can to springboard growth. Because if you're essentially watching this, there's a reason. There's always a reason why. And it might not be directly related, but it could be. It probably is indirectly related. It's just maybe even you hearing something here and then sharing it at a pivotal moment with other people might be the reason too. You never know. The other video that I found very compelling, and now I put both of these videos on my YouTube channel. So if you're interested, you can go into the playlists, and I've put both these videos there. Like I said, I will link them in this video as well. The other one is, the title of the video is Traoré's Shocked the West. Traoré's last warning to Netanyahu. Now, this video, this video I really liked. I was given it in a post on my community from UNN, that's the United Network News. Someone had posted this for us to view. And I've seen this gentleman previously. His name is, as I mentioned, Traoré. He's a leader of one of the African countries. And since he's essentially come into power, we'll say, or taken a leadership role, he's made a lot of changes as it appears from the videos that he puts out. And this particular video that he put out, he essentially talks about how he has discovered evidence and he's helped his counterparts all over Africa and other countries also find that same evidence and evict operatives from the CIA, from the Mossad, the MI6, from the embassies of Israel, the Israel's embassies and such, and others, that he deems as spies. He evicted them all out of Africa. And the claim is that he's unifying Africa. And that's, to me, an amazing thing. Now, of course, back to what I was saying before, and I'm putting this out there because I am watching videos that I don't necessarily know if they're true. We live in a world of deep fakes, and that means AIs that are able to create any type of image and make it look real. That means Tom Cruise talking to you, or he's on FaceTime, that type of real. And so we have AIs that can do that. They can generate a FaceTime call with whoever. Now, do they use those resources for everyone? Probably not. But the point is, if you're wanting to create some sort of event, emotionally spark and enrage people, then just so you're aware, they have the ability to put a man in a suit on a stage in front of 100 people. Maybe you might even know some of those people because you never know. Like, they have the ability to replicate images like CGI you've heard of, but there's also other technologies as well. And so adding all that little bit of disclosure in, I don't necessarily know if this is true. However, the message is true. The message of a leader which people respect coming up and actually saying what's happening and saying why, and claiming, now he claims that he's given the internet and Africans a lot of evidence, so I definitely would want, I don't know if I'd need to see that, because it's more so the message. It's the message that people are uniting, and it's becoming very, very known, the deception which has been around us for all of our lives. And so that kind of leads into what I was saying. Oh, by the way, that's Eevee. If you're watching on the screen, Eevee's a Lego Pokemon that my son and I put together. So Eevee is just something cute to look at while I'm recording this. I'm watching him, the bunny. I don't know if it's a bunny or a cat. It's like a cat bunny. But where was I going? So anyways, the situation happening in Africa is a great example of that the world is changing and people are taking notice, and they're not allowing things to go unsaid. They're not allowing these corporations and three-letter agencies and governments almost to continually abuse them, and they're coming together. See, there is another video that I don't have right now, but maybe I'll link it as well, a third video, and I don't know the gentleman's name, but he did a reaction video. And normally the reaction videos that I've seen, they're reacting for the first time watching a music video, especially a controversial music video like Tom McDonald or Eminem, but Tom McDonald specifically I enjoyed. Regardless, this particular reaction video, the gentleman was reacting to a whole bunch of essentially disclosure videos that have been put out on the internet. And I found it so fascinating. There was one video by a young lady who was talking about our language, the English language, being corrupted. And I found that so fascinating, just to hear a normal person just discussing it from her perspective. Like, I could go into a lot deeper and say certain words and get more detailed into it. However, her perspective of it was enlightening, because the way she's saying it, anyways, it was just the fact that she was saying it and it's being said. And then there was other stuff. There was this one old gentleman, at least it sounded old, and he was yelling at the government for not moving the moon, that the moon had been there. Like, he had noticed, he had been sitting there long enough that he's claiming that the moon hasn't moved. And I've often noticed that too, is the moon is like seeing it in the afternoon sky. Like, the moon should be on the other side of the planet, I imagined. At least that's how I thought about it. When we're on one side, the moon is on the other. That's kind of what I thought. Nonetheless, I've seen days where the moon didn't leave the sky, like in the middle of the sunlight. It's not the sun. The sun's over there, but the moon, you can see the moon in the daytime, like when it's not night out. So, but anyways, there was a lot of other stuff too. A lot of other, what I would say, truthful stuff being put out in all of these little shorts and all these quick videos, 3-minute videos, some of them longer. And anyways, this guy was, in a sense, reacting to him. And it was just really cool to see his reactions to some of the stuff that I already knew and to see him listening to it for the first time. And so that leads me into what I was saying yesterday is, like, how do we start off telling people stuff? And, the real answer is you don't necessarily need to start off. I talk, and if people are led to listen, they'll hear it. They'll be guided to what they need when they need it. And it's not really anyone's responsibility to run around waking everyone up. However, I do believe that it is important that we do share. See, one of the things that I saw on the original spiritual road that I took is this idea that everyone's on their own journey and we can't go doing anything for anyone else. They got to do all their own stuff. And while I completely agree with that, it does leave out that we do need to be there to ripple. And not only that, to be there when questions are required an answer to. When there are questions, for someone to actually be there to make it easier for that person. Because, that's kind of what we do as a group. If a group will learn quicker because one person will learn the first answer or for the first part of it, and then for the next people it's easier because now they have some sort of energy input to that concept into their collective. And whether that's seen as just a ripple of being, or a librarian who's helping, or someone who's sharing their experiences, it makes it easier for the rest of the collective to understand and to essentially grow quicker. So those 3 videos were very, very powerful. Now, I did watch a few other videos, but those 3 I really wanted to talk about because when I was watching the African gentleman speak, I forgot his name, Traoré. Yeah, it's very, very unique name for me to say. When I watched Traoré's video as he was talking to Netanyahu about kicking him out of his country, as he gave his long monologue, I noticed there was a lot of hurt and pain within his voice. And I don't mean hurt and pain as in hurt, like weakness. I mean trauma. One of the comments that he made was he's going to do all this biometrical scans on foreigners, all foreigners who come into the country. And, there's a lot of talk now about how he's going to get he said all foreigners. And so immediately, me not being part of that world, I think to myself, well, I don't really want to go to Tanzania if I'm going to have all of that extra security thrown on me. And so it's, in a sense, that frequency is a repelling frequency to tourism. And so while that is true, I understand why, like, definitely being under all of that control for so many years, like, we've all been under that control, but they're actually waking up to it. It's just phenomenal. So why I bring awareness, the concept of awareness from Tartaria to the African I don't know if it's a revolution, but it's an evolution definitely, is because there is still a lot of hurt and pain within that country, as in with any country. And they're awakening up in order to give the boogeyman a face. They're saying it's these politicians, it's these three-letter agencies, it's all of this. It's a lot more than that. It's a lot of CEOs and corporations and a lot of other stuff as well. But they're giving a face to it. And so it's important that anger is healed. And by having awareness that our history isn't necessarily the way that we've been told it, it makes it considerably easier for the people that have lived through this stuff, that we have common grounds more so than divisive grounds. And if we know the real history, especially the history when it comes to how war was staged and who funded what. That was really, really interesting. The video is that he gave all of these figures, and they once had to fund all of these operations. And when I say they, I mean the people, the groups of people, the families of people that this gentleman's talking about. And he's giving actual figures of how much it needed to be funded. So anyways, I hope that you enjoyed or found something interesting from this talk. I do believe, and I will continually talk about the concept of forgiveness, and forgiveness is so closely tied to awareness. So I hope you have a really, really good evening. Thank you so much for joining Evie and I. And definitely, if you have some things that you would like to talk about, I don't know if I can. You can always suggest them in the comments of any of the videos. Questions, I'd love to have some interaction. As I said, I supposedly, as per YouTube, have over 13,000 subscribers in India and Africa and Mongolia and Morocco and United States and UK, Australia, New Zealand, lots in India. So start talking. And even if you can't say it perfectly, like, write your own language. That's really cool too. We've got a lot of great work ahead of us, and the more awareness that we have, the more recognition of our true history, our true past, is definitely going to help us, catapult us, actually, not help, just shoot us right over the moon. And then when we're flying over the moon, we'll look back and be like, hey, there's a Club Med on the other side of the moon. Because we're probably going to find out there's a lot on the other side of the moon too. Have a really good night, and thanks for sharing with me.